Hi there. Today we're going to be learning how to make shibori, which is an ancient Japanese dyeing technique. It's a lot like tie-dye. We're going to create a pattern called Sekka Shibori, which is translated to snow flower, and it produces a beautiful pattern of flowers on your fabric. So let's get started. The first thing that you want to do is soak your fabric in soda ash water. So with my kit, I received a package of soda ash dye fixer, and you mix a cup of water per gallon of warm water. I have a half gallon in here, or 8 cups of warm water. So I'm going to mix in a half cup of the soda ash dye fixer. I'm just going to give it a little mix with my hand. And then I'm going to soak my 2 sheets of muslin fabric in here for 20 minutes. Okay, my fabric has soaked for 20 minutes, and now I'm going to wring it out. And this time I'm going to remember to put my gloves on because I don't want to damage my skin on my hands. So I'm going to wring them out, and one of these pieces I'm going to dry in the dryer, and the other I am going to apply my dye wet. I want to see what the difference is when you do one of each. So I'm wringing out all that extra water. And I think I'll dry this one in the dryer, the off-white one, and I will work with the white one wet. Now that I have wrung my fabric out and kept it wet, now I'm going to do the fold for the Sekka Shibori dyeing method. So what I did is I folded my piece of fabric in half, and now I'm going to layer it by folding back and forth. So I'm just taking a small piece and flattening it out as good as I can. And I'm going to flip it over and just go back and forth, folding it. Okay, I've got a nice long strip here, and now I'm going to start on one end of it and start folding a triangular shape into it. So I'm going to take the top, the end, and fold it over once, and then fold under, and I'm going to follow an over-under pattern, folding this piece of fabric. Works better when I'm standing. I might even try to go like this for the rest of it. Okay, I think on that last little piece, we'll fold that over. Once we've got a nice triangle shape to our fabric, we're going to take our rubber bands. You could also take your string, any type of string, to tie it up, but this time I'm going to use rubber bands to secure it. I want to make sure I'm getting it everywhere, so on all of my corners. Let's see. And now I'm going to prepare my dye. I'm now going to mix my dye, and I'm using Pro Scion cold water dye. So it says to mix this with a cup of cold water, which I've already pre-measured in these squeeze bottles. You are to add 2 teaspoons per cup. So I've got a half teaspoon here, so I'm going to use 4 scoops of this. And while I'm not going to use my squeeze bottles to dye, I thought it would be nice to mix it in here. That way I can shake it up and down and really get it dissolved. I'm putting a funnel in. If you don't have a plastic funnel, you could put a piece of cardstock, or just a piece of paper in there to act as a funnel. So I'm going to get 4 scoops of this, put it in. And this is fuchsia that I'm mixing. Boy, they don't give you too much in these little containers. It's kind of sticking in my funnel. There it goes. 3. And 1 more. 4. All right, now I'm going to put my lid on, making sure there's a cap on the top, and I'm going to give it a good shake so that dye dissolves really, really well in there. Okay, now I'm going to mix my second color. I chose turquoise, and I'm going to follow the same process. Now I did go to my sink and wash out my funnel and my measuring spoon really well because I don't want to mix my colors together. So I'm going to do the same thing. There's a cup of water in here, so that means I want to add 2 teaspoons or 4 half teaspoons of my dye. So there's 1. 2. 3. Sticking in there again. Give it a little tap. Wonder why it's doing this. There we go. And 1 more. 4. All right, that went in there. I'm going to put my cap on and give it a nice shake to dissolve that mixture. All right, so now I've got my 2 colors, my magenta and my turquoise, and I'm going to put those in some kitchen bowls. I probably won't use these for food anymore. I think we'll start with my magenta. So I'm going to be careful as I pour it. And I'm going to take my folded fabric and I'm going to dip the corners. As you can see, that dye is kind of working its way up through the fabric. So I think I'm going to do some pink on this corner, or magenta, I should say. And then on the other side, I'm going to add more of the turquoise. Set that down, and I'm going to put my turquoise dye mixture in here. And now I'm going to do this whole side over here. Dip it in. Whoops. You can see that it's working its way up through the fabric. I'm even going to turn it a little bit. One thing that I noticed that I forgot again was my gloves. You want to make sure you're wearing gloves when you do this. I'm going to let it soak in there for a little bit. Look at my hands. That's why you need gloves. All right, now that I've let it soak for a little while and got that dye to go up into the fabric a little bit more, I'm going to put it into a plastic baggie and let this set overnight. I want it to stay wet, so we're keeping it in the baggie so it doesn't dry out. My second piece of fabric just came out of the dryer, and it's nice and dry, but it is also very stiff. And I think that's due to the soda ash, but it's also very wrinkled. Now, because I'm doing the Sekka Shibori folding method and dyeing method, I'm going to go iron this so that I can get all these crinkles out of here. Okay, now that I have my second piece of cloth ironed and folded into the triangular shape, I'm going to use the same dye that I used before so as not to waste any. Now, the first time I dipped my corner into my magenta. This time I'm going to dip my corner into my blue, my turquoise. it doesn't want to go up into it the way that it did with the wet piece, which is interesting. With the wet piece, I could see the dye just going up into the fabric. This time it's kind of staying right where I dip. So I might try to just get a little bit more by bending and moving it a little bit. Okay, so I've got my turquoise on there. And now I'm going to switch over to my magenta. And as you can see, I remembered my gloves this time. And this time I'm just gonna submerge it, oops, in the magenta. And I'm gonna let that soak for a few minutes. Since the dye isn't moving up into the fabric the way it was with my wet piece, I'm kind of just smushing it around to get that dye on my pieces that are not covered. So I'm just kind of finagling it with my hand and moving the dye in the bowl so that it covers some of that area. And again, when we are done and ready, we're going to put our piece inside of a baggie. I've got a gallon-sized Ziploc bag here, and I'm going to shut it and let it sit overnight. Okay, I've let my fabric sit overnight in the plastic bag. The next step is I'm going to take them out of the bag and rinse them in cold running water. This was my wet one. I'm going to rinse with cold running water and get some of that excess dye off of there. Take out my other one and do the same. I'm going to untie or undo all the rubber bands and open it up and rinse it out. And now I'm going to run them through the wash on cold.